We're joined by Methuselah Capital Advisors founder John Chachas, and John is the former co-head of Lazard's global media practice. John, great to have you back with us.
Good morning.
As you think about this $50 billion valuation and Goldman Sachs being in this company, what is the biggest risk to these investors?
Well, the business itself has no peer, so it's not really a question of who's sneaking up behind them. I guess I would say the biggest risk to Facebook is in a sense its success, and governments don't like companies that get this big and this powerful.
But as you know, when John was, he put up this chart about how Facebook compares to other companies like Google, like Apple.
Yeah.
They are a long way off from being valued as big as an Apple.
Well, they are from a public valuation perspective, but in terms of its scope and its reach and its power, Facebook has challenges in China because of that power. It reaches 600 million users, more than that, in a very short period of time. And I would just say that the biggest risk is that someday too many people sitting in a room in Washington or in some other capital around the world take notice. Yes.
So how do they preempt that?
Well, I think one of the ways that they're going to preempt that is doing exactly what they're doing now, which I personally think this company remains quite private for a long time. Everything Mr. Zuckerberg has said and his speeches, to me, suggests he's not interested in being a great big public company with the hot white lights of people like you talking about their earnings every quarter. So I think
we're already talking about them in their
well, we are,
company.
and it's sort of unavoidable when you have a company that's this successful. I mean, there's an immense power in what he's created, just an immense power. The number of users is one thing, but the amount of time people are spending on this service is quite incredible. In the last year, most websites saw a decline in the average user length. This company's is actually up by 10%.
I've seen an increase. So, John, are you telling me that you think they'll never IPO, or that they're just not going to for a long, long time?
Who knows? I mean, the only person that knows that would be Mr. Zuckerberg. But I suspect that if they solve the problem of liquidity for some of their early investors, which is clearly what this structure helps to do, it takes away one of the needs to be public. There are two needs to be public. You need capital. He doesn't need capital.
No.
Or you need liquidity.
But don't you get to a point, though, as a company, when you get so big that there is this pressure, though, to eventually go public?
I don't know. There are many private enterprises still in the country, very successful ones that, manage to remain private forever and ever.
Who?
Koch Industries, private company. The Hearst Corporation, private company. There are private companies, great ones, that do their business extraordinarily well and don't have any need to be public.
And, John, right before the break, you said something very interesting. You said that you don't think that Facebook is going to IPO, at least for the time being. Some are saying, like, that's inevitable. What does that mean then for investors? What's their upside then?
Well, things can appreciate in value without having liquidity. I mean, there are people who believe this asset with 600 million users growing at a breakneck pace.
But don't most investors get into a company like Facebook and they want an exit plan?
Sure. Most small investors need liquidity and need to know that there's going to be an event someday. If you look at this discussion, people who are being asked, do you want to invest in this company? I put my hand up. I'm a tiny investor at Goldman. I'm not going to get any of this. But investors are being told you're going to get in this and you're going to be in it for a long time. You may be illiquid for a long time. So you have to be a sophisticated investor with large capital with no need for the door anytime soon. That doesn't mean that the asset's not going to appreciate dramatically.
Well, do you think it's going to appreciate dramatically?
I think you look at the statistics today about how it's growing, how rapidly it's growing. It's not even in China in a meaningful way at all. There are parts of the world where it hasn't expanded to yet, and yet it is the most phenomenal example of the internet's growth that there is. So yes, I think its appreciation is.
But Dixon had mentioned something interesting, which is that because of the size, and you kind of alluded to this, because of the size, it'll have a hard time getting into a market like China, which I would think would be the next big market to tackle.
I'm not sure it's its size. I think in the case of China, it may be what it represents. It's the connection of people and the information that's being shared amongst all those people that certain governments get nervous about. I think that's the real risk. The risk to investors here is one word: government. Government around the world, and that someday decides that Facebook, like Standard Oil or American Tobacco or AT&T, just got too big for its own good. I hope that doesn't happen, but I think that's its only real risk.
And for Mark Zuckerberg, he's handling that well so far?
Well, he's an interesting person. I've never met him, but I've read a lot and watched what he said. He certainly doesn't seem to be a person that's anxious to go out and be a public CEO. I think he looks like
and he almost seems to be setting the bar for other CEOs of companies like this. Am I wrong about it?
Well, he's saying things about how he's going to dispose of his wealth and things that he's going to do on a social basis that I think are great examples of people in his generation.
Now, you and I were just talking in the break. Facebook harnesses a huge amount of information, right? More so, you say, than any other company.
Has a lot of information.
Private information.
Yes.
Doesn't have my information just yet, but it has a lot of people.
You say you haven't friended anybody yet.
Right, exactly. I'm missing Facebook friends. Okay, but how do you take that and because we talk about Facebook as a media company, how do you take that and harness it with an old media company?
Well, first of all, there are 1 million websites today who actually grant access to their site through Facebook Connect, including MySpace, by the way. So it has become the access point for people who want to be in the internet, in a sense. That information is, if it can be delivered on a granular basis, your geography, your socio-demographic, how much money you make, what do you enjoy doing, the kind of information it can deliver to people trying to find a customer is awesomely powerful. And if they deliver that well, it may be the most important invention of the advertising age. I mean, it really could.
Right, and because right now they're just doing general advertising.
They are developing
multi-layered.
lots of tools about how to harness that information.
John, good to talk with you.